Hey everybody, Gromos here with some more Warthunder historic battle action. So, last week I finally unlocked the P-51D Mustang. Those things take a while when you play all the nation's tech trees at the same time, but now I have it and it's time for my first P-51D video. Well, let's take a look at the plane. The Mustang is of course a boom and zoom plane. I have used the British Mustang Mark 1A before, and in comparison with that, the newer D model is heavier and therefore has a higher wing loading. But the D has the Packard Merlin engine, which is quite a bit more powerful than the older Allison in the Mark 1A Mustang, especially at higher altitudes of course. So while the D turns a bit worse, it can keep its speed up better thanks to the stronger engine. Of course, most planes at this level have a pretty high wing loading. The higher weight means the plane also dives better and keeps energy well in zoom climbs, but it is not impressive in sustained climbing. Still okay though, not a good climber, but not the worst either. Now the P-51D, just like the Mark I and the King Cobra, has a laminar flow wing which reduces drag and therefore increases maximum speed and range, but also makes the stall speed a bit higher, so it will stall sooner. Despite that, as far as stall characteristics go, the D surprised me a bit. Pretty much all US fighters I have flown so far in Warthunder had a pretty nasty stall characteristics, some more than others. They stall pretty soon because of the high wing loading, but more importantly, they often stall very abruptly and without warning, making a lot of them somewhat tricky to fly with direct control. The best example for that would be the P-40 and the King Cobra. In my opinion, the most challenging US planes to avoid stalls and spins in. So with the Mustang also having laminar flow wings, like the King Cobra, I expected a similar behavior. However, it turns out the P-51 is a lot easier to handle. The P-51 with its high wing loading of course still stalls pretty early and won't turn as good as the King Cobra, which has a lower wing loading than the Mustang. However, the Mustang stalls a lot less abrupt and for the most part gives you enough warning before it stalls. So in maneuvers the P-51 is simply easier to handle than the King Cobra or the P-40 with direct control, even though it won't turn as tight as them. One exception is the tendency of the plane to snap roll in some situations, a problem the real plane apparently had as well, and an additional dorsal fin was added to the P-51 later to counter this. Now the D-30 in-game has this dorsal fin, but to be honest I'm not sure if it is modeled in the flight model as well. It does feel to me that the D-30 is less prone to those kind of snap rolls, and a bit more stable, but I might just imagine that. I had a few involuntary snap rolls in the T-30 as well. Now on the armament. The P-51 has of course the typical 650 caliber armament of most US fighters. Now I like the 650s a lot on the P-40 and the 8 on the P-47 are nice as well. However, I think up here on tier 13, where most other fighters have 20 or even 30mm cannons, the armament is a bit lacking. On the plus side, the 50s carry a big ammo supply, so you don't run out of ammo easily. And of course, the 50s can fire longer sustained bursts than cannons without overheating. That however is an ability which I think is more useful on lower levels. The higher you go up the tech tree, the faster the planes get and the wing loading gets higher as well, which usually leads to an environment where you don't have time for long bursts, but only a split second to fire, and in such an environment, in my opinion, cannons simply perform better. Well, that was some info on the P-51D. Let's take a look at some fights in it. That's a match on Krimsk, and I picked this one because it is a good example for how not knowing when to stop can give you a lot of trouble. We are pretty high up and the only enemy I have spotted so far is a LA-7, which is a bit higher at first, but soon on similar altitude and moving away from me at this point. My team is partially below and above me. I start to move in the direction of the LA-7, hoping he might continue to lose altitude and I can get above him. The LA-7 meanwhile turned around and is coming closer again, but it seems he's not coming my direction, but is flying toward one of my teammates to my right, so I keep going in his direction, hoping for an opportunity to get a few shots in when he passes me. I descend slightly to build up some speed, but the LA-7 is not alone. Two more opponents are coming from the same direction. A Yak-3 and a 9P. They are both lower than me, and at least the 9P is climbing straight for me, but with two of them and the LA-7 close by, I don't want to engage here, so I just keep going. They were lower, so they can't follow me. With the 9P lower than me, I could maybe have tried to zoom climb and then attack from above, but the LA-7 would most likely have had enough energy to engage me should I have tried that, so I chose not to. One of the friendly Spitfires is attacking the LA-7 and distracting it, and at first it looks to me like the 9P is moving away, so I turn around again, hoping to get above them or catch them unaware. But the 9P is turning towards me again, and there are still too many opponents around that I want to risk an engagement here. So again I just keep going, and one of my teammates forces the 9P down. That would be a good opportunity for me to loop around and start attacking the now lower opponents. But just as I want to do that, another LA-7 enters the fight, coming in from my 12 o'clock and is heading straight for me. I am pretty slow from beginning the loop I wanted to do, and in no position to start a fight right here. So I just dive down a bit, accidentally snap roll the plane, and just keep going with the LA-7 following me. Now, the LA-7 is not fast enough to catch me, but I am not fast enough to really pull away from him either. The LA-7's wing loading is on about the same level than the Mustang's, so I have no intention of just flying away hoping he gives up. However, I do want to drag him far enough away from the fight so that I have some time to fight him with hopefully nobody else interfering. Since there are quite a few opponents active, I dragged the LA-7 away a fair bit. However, there were also quite a few Spitfires of pretty high altitude, so I hope they can keep the enemy team busy for a while as well. Now, after I feel we are far enough away, I start the fight the way I nowadays usually do in US fighters and other planes that dive well. I split S and dive down. The LA-7 follows, being a good diver as well. Then I pull out pretty hard, and then when he's about to pass me, I roll the aircraft upside down and barrel roll after him. I found this to be a very good way to start fights in this plane versus opponents of similar wing loading. Now I roll in behind him and he is diving away, and initially pulling away a bit. But eventually I could catch up to him thanks to the P-51's good dive acceleration. He goes in a loop though, but straight in front of me, so I can get a few shots in when he passes me. While doing so, I pull a bit too abrupt on the stick and do a 180-degree snap roll. One of those snap rolls I told you earlier the plane sometimes does. But in this case it's not a disadvantage, I wanted to do a split S anyway. He comes around and I pull into him again, and start rolling a split second before he passes me. So when he passes, I'm already rolled in the right direction to loop after him. So I get behind him again and a few more shots in. Now I make a big mistake though. He goes into a defensive barrel roll, and what I should have done here is to break off the chase and stay above him and re-evaluate the situation, since there are still a lot of enemy fighters around and I don't know where they are. He is losing altitude and energy in his defensive move, so if I would have just broken off, I could have stayed above him and then used a boom and zoom attack on the LA-7. And additionally, I could have reacted to other threats, but as I've said in an earlier video, it is sometimes hard to let go when you are behind an opponent. So since I followed the LA-7 down, my options, now that a new opponent, a Yak-9P, appeared, are limited. He came in with a speed advantage, so I can't get away, I have to turn fight the 9P as well. That on its own would not be such a problem, I still have enough altitude left to regain enough speed to do that, but I can see that there are even more enemy fighters coming my way, and I can't just fly straight and run away with the 9P that close. I hope to get the 9P out of the fight and then dive away, but there is not enough altitude to do that. One of the newcomers is fast enough to catch up, and while looking back I misjudged my altitude and hit a tree. But that did not make much of a difference in the 4 versus 1 situation this fight quickly turned into. So, the lesson to take away from this is, know when it is better to quit, give up a chase and re-evaluate the situation, especially when your opponent is diving away and will be on lower altitude after you do. This can be especially important in the P-51, since it often needs a few more hits with its machine gun armament, and that can tempt you even more to overextend and finish off an opponent. Well, let's take a look at a few more fights on the Guardian Angel event. Not the most balanced event I have ever played, but I got some nice fights nonetheless. I am a bit behind and higher than the bomber formation, and I assume the enemy fighters I can't see yet are still in front of the formation. Still, I don't know where everyone is, so I don't want to commit to a fight yet. But a 190 is presenting me with a good opportunity to attack, so I fire a burst on him while passing. At the same time though, a new opponent shows up, a 109 G10 at higher altitude, and surprisingly from behind. He must have bypassed the fight to attack the formation from behind. So I just keep going and keep an eye on him. If he is going for a teammate, I can reverse and attack him while he does so, but it looks like he's following me. At this point I think we are the highest fighters around. Now I could have tried to drag him towards my teammates, but I don't know how busy they are with the rest of the enemy team, and I don't know if he would let me do that. He might just climb away if I fly towards my team. After all, I am fairly sure that he is higher than all of them at the moment. But also, since we are pretty high up, I think I can engage pretty safe. The Mustang is a great diver. Should things not go my way, I can always dive towards my team. So I do a split S, which he, unlike the LA7 from the first fight, does not follow. Instead he comes around in what looks like from my point of view like a high yo-yo and dives towards me when I climb up. I again try to roll in such a way that I can loop after him when he passes me. He goes up in the vertical, a move I don't want to directly follow in my heavier Mustang, as it would lose more speed in it. Instead I follow with the nose pointing below in a high yo-yo, and when he passes me I go into a low yo-yo, the nose almost 90 degrees down. I want to use the speed from the low yo-yo to do another high yo-yo, but he does a split S and dives away, and I roll to follow him. Now he turns into me again and goes into a flat turn for a bit. Here the fact that the Mustang, unlike some other US fighters, gives enough warning before it stalls comes in handy, as you can go pretty close to the stall point without overdoing it. Now once again I try to roll in such a way that I can easily follow when he passes me, and after he does so he goes up in the vertical. And again I don't want to follow directly, since the 109 is better in the vertical than the Mustang in a situation like this. So I give a bit of rudder to follow with a flatter flight path with less vertical component, waiting to intercept him when he comes down again. And when he does loop back down, I'm already pointing in the right direction and can follow him, and he goes up into another loop. Now however I have managed to get enough energy to follow directly and get in fire position. The rest of my team is now showing up as well. With all the additional fighters from my team entering the scene, the fight is pretty much over. I follow him a bit more and get a few more hits in, but with so many blue fighters passing around, I don't want to risk friendly fire or collision. So eventually I break off and let my team handle the rest, while I climb again and look if there are still targets worth going for around. But the only other enemy fighter left is a 190 on the airfield, and he goes down as well shortly after, so this match is over. Well, let's take a look at a similar fight 2 matches later. I just had a little skirmish with a 190 and I'm on my way back towards the main B-17 formation. Now, remember in the last match when the 109 showed up behind me unexpectedly? Well, you know the old saying, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Well, shame on me then, because even though it's just 2 matches later, I completely forgot about that and I again assumed that the enemy fighters are in front of me, and again I'm wrong. The consequences are a little bit more severe this time though, and I take some damage to the tail. Luckily it is not affecting the plane too much. It seems a bit more unstable and more prone to stalling and snap rolling, but otherwise it seems fine. Now, after diving away a bit, I level out and take a look at the situation. 2 109s showed up from behind, but it seems only one is following me, a G6, and he is getting closer. I am also about to run into the level boundary. This event has a pretty narrow playing field, and I want to act before I get placed in a possibly worse position. Because I was in a bit of a hurry to make my move, I did not roll sufficiently to the side before pulling up, and I almost flew through his fire. But only almost, and I did roll before he passes me, so that I could loop after him after he passed me. I get behind him and he goes up in the vertical. As with the G10, I don't want to follow directly in the heavy Mustang. Instead I follow his turn while even having the nose pointed slightly down to trade a bit of altitude back for speed. This way I can keep up enough speed to get lead on him and point the nose up on him, but just when I'm about to get ready to fire, he disappears. I'm confused for a second to what happened, but it is of course the level border we crossed while fighting, and a second later I get placed back on the map as well. I come out in a good position and can go straight after him. He goes up in a loop, but I have enough speed to follow him and slowly get closer. So he does 2 split S to evade, but I can follow them relatively easy, and in those downward maneuvers I build up speed very well and get slowly closer. When he's pulling up after his second split S, I get in a good position to fire and I get a good salvo in. The second one though misses, because I am too close for the convergence of the guns, and the wing-mounted guns fire past him on both sides. So I break off and go into a barrel roll to gain a bit of a separation again, which is not easy. The plane with its damaged tail has a tendency to stall and snap roll when doing continuous barrel rolls like that, which can be dangerous at the now lower altitudes. But I can recover when the plane threatened to enter a spin, and I am still behind the 109 and can fire a few more shots after him. He goes in a tight barrel roll to throw my aim off, and I try to follow at first. But it looks like I'm getting too close again, so I break off and do a wider barrel roll to the other side to gain some distance again and get back into fire position. I also notice a new enemy fighter appearing close by on the minimap, but it looks like there are already 2 teammates on him, so I hope that this is enough to keep him from attacking me while I am busy with the G6. And indeed, while this enemy fighter got dangerously close at first, it then moves away from my position pretty fast. Another P-51 is now also attacking the G6, and I almost get the plane into a spin again while doing scissors. But by now the 109 is too damaged and going down. And another teammate finishes off the last enemy fighter, so this match is over. Well then, that was some P-51D action, and this is it for this video. As always, I hope it was entertaining, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll see you next time.